So on January 21st, 2009, I was working as a truck helper in a commercial vehicle, a commercial truck, 26,000 pound box van. And my brother was driving it. We were working for the same company. So he was always an atheist his whole life, right? And so like when we partied or whatever together, the conversation would always turn to God, and I would always take God's side, and he would always take this side of what is supposedly called science, right? When in reality it's just whether you believe in God or not. But I had been researching the Illuminati and some stuff like that the night before, and had been talking to him about it for like a week or whatever. And I was sitting there telling him about some stuff, and like he didn't believe me. So like the day before, so I went and I like did all this research the next day, and then I also brought a Bible with me in my pocket just to annoy him because he's my brother, right? And so about 9 o'clock in the morning at 12141 Southeast Division Street in Portland, Oregon, on January 21st, 2009 or 2010, I was telling him these things, and then he goes, "You know what? You're right." And suddenly, out of nowhere, the truck steered over, and there was no there was only sidewalk, and the side of a building. Road, sidewalk, side of a building. He steered up onto the sidewalk, didn't crash into the building, and just kept going down the street. Bam, 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 knocking over street signs. They're just going down as we're going down the sidewalk, and I'm screaming his name, and I'm looking over at him, and I'm shouting, Jeremy, and he doesn't even hear me. And I look at his feet, and his feet are just waving, over both the pedals, and he's making these weird groaning noises. And then I didn't know what to do, and this all happened in a matter of like maybe 5 seconds. And we come to the end of the intersection, and just bam, we slam like the truck slams between a telephone pole and a tree, and there's like 5 or 6 pedestrians waiting to cross the street right in front of the truck, but we didn't hit any of them. And the tree and the telephone pole wedged both of the doors. All the windows shattered, and there was glass flying down. And then my brother, the first thing that I had heard him say since this had happened, was, "Fuck, I'm fired," right? And I go, "Well, climb out the window," And so I climbed out the passenger window, he climbed out the driver's window. But as soon as I hit the concrete, those pedestrians were surrounding me like an angry mob, And then I was like, I don't know, something happened to my brother, So they all kind of calmed down. And then a police car pulled up, and he said something like "long night last night" or whatever to me. And I was like, I didn't know what he was talking about. But I looked over at my brother who had come around, and then I looked at the street, and we had knocked down a electrical wire from the sky or whatever that was hanging on the pole. And I saw him, and he was just shaking, and he was completely pale, and almost looked like he was foaming at the mouth or something. Like there was something wrong with him, you know what I mean? And so I told the police that I thought he got electrocuted when I saw the electrical wire, and asked if they would take him to the hospital. So They took him to the hospital, and then we worked for a small company, so by this time, fire trucks and the power company had shown up, and it was just a big scene. Ambulance came and took him, and then the owner of my company, or I think I rode in the ambulance. I don't remember exactly how I got to the hospital too, but the owner of my company showed up at the hospital, and he was just furious. That first of all, that his truck had crashed, and secondly, that his employees were at the hospital, and that because his company was gonna have to pay for it or whatever, right? Because it happened at work. And so he was sitting here like mocking, like talking to other people on the phone about the superficial glass cuts that Jeremy had on his face, just from the glass, and then he was like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with him, ha ha," and he was just like, just had this insane, like, evil, mocking laughter that he was using against him, and he's just sitting there like, and then the nurses were coming up, like the nurses kept coming up saying, it's a miracle that nobody got hurt, and they kept trying to calm down the owner of the company. They said that 3 different times to him, and on the third time is when I remembered that I had that Bible in my pocket, right? And so because I was just in the waiting room. I had been in the waiting room for like 2 or 3 hours, just as all this stuff was going on around me, and just didn't know what else to do. So I put my hand on my thigh, and sure enough, there was something there, and I pulled out one of those little Gideon Bibles, and then I opened it up, and I turned to the front page that gives you information on where to look in the Bible for certain things, and then I just seen travel, and it was Psalms 121. I turned to Psalms 121, and it was like amazing, because it was, not only did it describe like he won't allow your foot to be moved, but it was talking about exactly like the same conversation that we had just before it happened. When it's talking about the sun and the moon and all this, like, these were things that we were talking about that morning just before this happened. It was just like, wow, crazy, So we come to find out that, and my brother had explained it to me in the hospital. He said, that it felt like something had pulled him, like he had been pulled out of his body. But and then later, years later, like he was saying that he had fainted and all these other things, but he didn't. He never fainted, and because I was looking at him, and I know that his eyes were wide open, and not only that, but we were staring straight down. Now, the doctor said that there was no medical explanation, but his first explanation was that he had gone blind. Okay, so right before he had gone blind, he said, "Oh God, my vision's going out," and that was when he steered up onto the sidewalk. And so, from then on, like, it was like, bam, I'm a Christian. Now, before that, I was I was really studying. I was reading the Bible because it was true, and I had told my ex-girlfriend, or my children's mother, like, she's like, "Why are you reading the Bible? Blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Well, I'm reading it because it's true," and because I had read, David Icke, and The Biggest Secret, David Icke, or whatever, and William Cooper's Behold the Pale Horse, and some other things like that. So I was like, I thought it was really well done, and so I was looking for evidence of it in history, because that's where it would be, right? So Anyway, that's how all of a sudden uh, she decided to leave me. Me and my brother both lost our jobs after that. My house slid down the hill. You know, and then I had both my kids with me. You know, just unbelievable stuff there. All the rest of it. All the rest of it came out later, but that's just sort of all I knew at the time. You know what I mean? And then it wasn't until 2012 that God actually contacted me personally during, you know, all these other problems that I was facing with Satanists and things like that. So that's my story.